Now, with Joe Biden under huge political pressure as a result of the controversial Allied withdrawal from Afghanistan, and with major questions being posed about his cognitive health, is it just a matter of time before his deputy, Kamala Harris, becomes president? If so, who is this woman? What is her background? What are her values and politics? And does she have the skill set and indeed public support to become the next unexpected president? Let's speak to a man who knows this woman's history very well indeed. I'm delighted to welcome the chief strategist for Republicans overseas, the one and only Erol Morkoc. Hi, Erol.
Hi, thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Do you think that it's very possible Kamala Harris will become president before the next election?
I would say it is more possible than any time that I can think of in modern history. I have 2 history degrees, that the vice president actually has a puncher's chance at that. Would I say it's a probability? No. Their entire goal is to get him through the midterms. That's something that, I mean, White House staffers have been pretty open about. That's not the only lead you can get out of there. And the Kamala and Biden camps aren't exactly friendly to each other. So the only way that this could happen would be if, God forbid, President Biden had a health issue or had to actually step away. But the reality of that, based on his age and what people have noticed about his sort of cognitive sort of, I don't want to pass judgment, but definitely it seems like he loses his train of thought quite a bit. So there could be a situation medically, but from a political gamesmanship point of view, I would be shocked if they actually tried to replace her directly.
Yes, I mean, how many more stumbling performances from Joe Biden will the American people tolerate?
Well, I mean, that's the million-dollar question, right? Because Joe Biden was elected almost as an avatar meme. You have the avatar sunglasses and the ice cream, and it's all well and good when there's no real challenge. When you have a bunch of sort of blowhards running the but the ship is the last century of American exceptionalism. It's very hard to upset that ship. What we're seeing in Afghanistan, what we're seeing at the border, especially with Kamala, who's supposed to be the border czar, we have 1.5 million border crossings up in a 20-year high. When they actually got presented with real problems, the house of cards folded. It's like you watch that HBO not documentary, God forbid, that show Veep. It's supposed to be a comedy. It's ending up to be the real U.S. government, this sort of incompetence personified, and that's the real fear of if Kamala Harris was elected, because I mean Joe Biden he's losing the support of the American people, but Kamala Harris never had the support of her own party. She only garnered 3% of the votes before the primary in her home state of California. She was polling at 0%. She didn't even run. She's the most unelectable figure. So you could have a terrifying situation if Joe Biden passed away and or something else happened and Kamala Harris took the reins. She could very well be legitimately impeached for dereliction of duty and complete incompetence based on her first 200, 300 days of performance. She's off in Southeast Asia right now, where she, I believe, talked about being the last person in the room in Afghanistan. So one thing I can tell you about Kamala Harris is that she is in the game for Kamala Harris. She started out in San Francisco dating the mayor Willie Brown, took that trajectory all the way through that sort of California, San Francisco politics, just like Gavin Newsom. And now the crows are coming home to roost. And the incompetence and the nepotism that got these people to these positions on all sides are terrifying. And that's not from being a Republican, that's just as an American. There's a certain level of incompetence that starts to be dangerous to all of us.
So what do we know about her background, her childhood? Do we know about her family life? Was she very privileged?
Well, she certainly portrays herself as having come from, the very lowest social class, when in fact there was a very middle class upbringing in great part. She certainly went through the busing programs. Didn't have a wealthy upbringing, but I mean to say that she wasn't in abject poverty. And she obviously was a very astute, intelligent student, and especially when she challenged Joe Biden, said, I was one of those people who you opposed on these busing programs. So as far as her childhood and who she was as a young girl, she was always an activist. She was always somebody who her mentors and teachers saw as somebody who wanted to be involved. So her commitment to, let's say, Kamala Harris was always there. But when she finally got through law school, her real leg up went through the district attorney of San Francisco into the attorney general. And that all came out of basically dating the mayor, Willie Brown. And while she did that, she put 1,900 people in jail for marijuana offenses. You have Tulsi Gabbard, who's pointing out the evidence that she suppressed evidence potentially to keep somebody on death row, all the while she refused to have the death penalty on some cop killer. So she's a paradox because she's an opportunist. So when you look at her history, she likes to draw when it's convenient for her. When they asked her about marijuana, for example, she said, "Oh, I'm Jamaican. Of course I've smoked marijuana." But then when they asked her in the African-American community, then she's an African-American. Then when they asked her in the Southeast Asian community, she's a Southeast Asian. And those are all true things. But ultimately, she is an American. And I'm an immigrant myself from Turkey, but I'm an American too. So she plays a lot of very astute political games, but they're games to get in positions of power, not actually positions of action. And that's where her childhood and her background leave us the most at geopolitical risk. I don't doubt that she could run a community center or perhaps even. She's not a foolish woman. She's certainly educated, and we respect her as the vice president. We're not like the left who castigate the officials of our country. But her entire life story seems to be a contradiction, back and forth, whether it is on social justice and for example, the left sees her as a cop. You would hear during the election or the primaries, Kamala Harris as a cop because she's a prosecutor, and all cops are bad, and it's so the left was against. She was supposed to speak at my alma mater at UC Berkeley. She turned it down because the right would say that she's too far left, and then she'd be protested by as being a fascist if you try to speak at UC Berkeley. So Kamala Harris has played the fence so well. In fact, the only person who's played the fence better and kept their head down to the top is Mr. Biden, I would say. And this very asymmetric strategy has taken the White House.
She wasn't very woke when she was Attorney General of California.
Oh, no, she was the opposite of woke. Now, she ran on a little bit of a woke agenda. Essentially, when she ran, she said, I won't oppose the death penalty, to the point when a police officer was brutally murdered. And Dianne Feinstein, a Democrat legend in California, came out and said, this is one of the special circumstances the death penalty is. So she'll be woke, and then she'll be unwoke, and then she'll come back, depending on who the governor is. It's sort of the fair weather fan, and she's caught the right sails all the way now. And if she gets promoted captain, nobody's realized that she had no idea how to navigate. That's the problem. She's come to her the right sails.
Let's come to her fitness for high office, because she's on a diplomatic trip at the moment, just as, of course, one of America's biggest diplomatic challenges for decades unfolds. She was criticised for her reaction to journalists as she boarded a plane. Take a look at this.
Madam Vice President, what's your response to reports of Americans?
Hold on. Slow down, everybody. I want to talk about two things. First, Afghanistan.
OK, first of all, what's going on with the giggling, and what's going on with the shrug of the shoulders?
It's again, armchair psychology, but it seems like to be her defense mechanism. Whenever she's confronted, it's her it's her buying time to think of an answer. And so she goes to try to appear cool and collected. She seems to resort to this, what she thinks is like a laughing, jovial thing, but it comes off as this cackling, Wizard of Oz witch personality to people. When you see somebody laughing like that about serious situations, we see babies being handed over barbed wire fences. We hear of executions and all that, and her first instinct is to protect herself through this sort of cackling, giggling, while she can gather her thoughts and get on a plane. Mark you, in that same interview, the White House released a photo of her waving off the top of the steps. Who was she waving to? There was nobody there. It was just photo ops, and as soon as somebody asked a real question, she, reverted to her diversion tactics and went on. And, this worked in the beginning, but it's not working anymore. I'm getting texts from Democrat friends. They're not saying, "Oh, I wish I voted for Trump." They're not this and that, but they're saying this is not good. This is not decent. This is not what a decent person would do. And you look at Joe Biden walking away, turning his back when they say, "Will you be getting any Americans out today?" and just walking away. This is the least transparent presidency in again, the modern, especially in the modern internet age.
Well, let's bring,
and that's sort of exemplified by these.
Erol, let's bring my fantastic panel in of Abby, Amy and Calvin. I mean, I wonder, Amy, whether we're extra critical of Kamala Harris because she's a woman.
I think you have been a bit critical of Kamala Harris there. But when you talk about the Wizard of Oz witch, that is me, because I'm from the Emerald City this evening. Let's focus on some of the good she's done, can we? Can we? Let's talk about what she's done for reproductive rights. Go on, over to you.
Erol?
I think she's always been a fan of women's right to choose, and that's something. Especially also, I think from her time in the district attorney, she prosecuted a lot of very successful cases against child trafficking and whatnot. So, yeah, she has done good things in her life. I mean, I'm not saying she's an evil person. I'm just saying when she laughs, she basically looks like the Wicked Witch of the West.
I mean, Calvin, we're right, aren't we, to examine the track record of someone that could potentially become president? Because in the States, the way the Constitution works, they don't have votes of confidence in the House of Commons like we have here, or snap general elections. Whatever happens, if the president falls, the vice president takes over.
Absolutely. And where has she been for the last few days? Where was she when all of this was kicking off in Afghanistan? She was very quiet, which was disturbing. And we saw Joe Biden making contradictory statements, accusing everyone of, pushing the blame onto everyone else, the intelligence community, the Afghans themselves, the international community. And when he was advised that Afghanistan would fall and Kabul would fall, he said, no, it would not happen. So he's tried to push the blame. If he gets pushed out, I understand there's no vote of no confidence, but there should be. If he gets pushed out in some way or shape or form, she will become the president. And that's a scary thing, because what does she stand for?
I mean, is that true, Errol, that if, for example, Joe Biden stood down, because my guess is that his health is okay, but his cognitive health is another matter. And if it was just felt by those around him that he wasn't able to be the president anymore, I mean, let's not forget, not just those stumbling performances in interviews, but also getting lost on his way into the White House just a few short days ago. Does Kamala Harris become president automatically? I mean, does that happen sort of in an unchecked manner?
So the quick answer is yes. But if you had asked me this question in 1990, I would say absolutely yes, and there would be a swearing-in ceremony the next day, and she would be president. We are living in the age of what I believe the New York Times yesterday called the age of perpetual impeachment. Now, removing a sitting president who's been elected has never been done, and it would be a very dangerous and bold move. But as you've seen from the impeachment of Bill Clinton for perjury all the way to the impeachment of Donald Trump for we're not quite exactly sure what, the concept of impeachment has become sort of just like a sidebar. And the next step in the impeachment process, which is basically a censor in the U.S. House, is the Senate actually votes on a removal. And if the Senate votes on a removal, which you would still need 60-40 in that, then the Speaker of the House, which we would win the midterm elections, and it would be Kevin McCarthy, would actually supersede. So it would be the first time, and I'm telling you as a political strategist, the first time that there would actually be a real talk of removing the newly coronated Vice President or President Harris, because she was completely unelectable and nobody on the left and right wanted her. And if the Republicans have the power after how they treated Trump, I wouldn't bet against seeing something unprecedented like that.
And would that provoke, if that were to happen, I know there are many ifs and buts on that, but would that provoke an early election? Would there be a snap poll at that point?
We don't have that, actually. It would be almost a custodial role for the Speaker of the House. I'll tell you, and here's the other side of it. The House of Representatives is allowed to appoint anybody they want to be the Speaker of the House. They don't have to appoint a member. So in theory, completely under the law, after they win the majority in 2022, they could elect Donald Trump to be the figurehead of the Speaker of the House, impeach Kamala Harris if Joe Biden stepped down and Donald Trump was de facto be caretaker president of the United States of America. And that would be completely legal within 100%.
Oh
I'm not saying that it's going to happen.
Let's make it happen.
Politics. I didn't write the rules.
Absolutely fascinating prospect, I've got to say. Erol, thank you so much for joining us. A really interesting conversation, and you've really definitely filled us in on this woman that is the vice president who could potentially go on to be the president of the United States.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.